Hey, gentlemen, welcome to the show. Chat, welcome to the show. I hope everybody's having a good day. We definitely are looking ready. We are ready to unleash hell on Hamas and also make Europe great again. This is Council on Future Conflict, episode 477. My name is Scott, the proprietor of the Future Conflict channel. Today, we got a hell of a show for you guys. A lot of stuff happening in the world. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that's happening that's kind of like setting the pieces in place for something to happen, or maybe it's all just kind of prelude for a fizzle. Who knows? But I never bank on good news, so we shall see. Scott's on the wrong mic. Am I on the? One second.
Yeah, you've got the entire world screeching at you, so you,
I
you need
know.
to.
I saw. I know. I got. They're right.
All right, is that better? How's it sound? Chat, am I working now?
Does it meet the approval of the masses? All right.
In fairness, Joe and Watcher, you guys didn't say anything about it, so I guess I sounded okay to you. Yeah, see, much better. There we go. All right, we fixed the glitch. I feel like that's what's happening in Washington. They're fixing a lot of glitches, and some people are freaking pissed off about it. So it's nice
Oh,
to.
you fired Milton. Slow down there, Professor. We fixed the glitch.
We just fixed it. I mean, you know what's funny is so much of what was happening in Office Space absolutely applies now to what's been going on with Doge and the federal government. I mean,
I know. I put out
literally,
a tweet the other day that said a live look at Donald Trump and Elon Musk, and it was the two
what would
Bobs.
you say
What would
you
you
do?
say you do here?
Oh, not much, Bob. I just come in and I probably only do 15 total minutes of work all week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, based on, so I listened to that press conference today, the one in the Oval Office where freaking X was picking his nose and stealing the show. But Elon said something that's kind of stuck with me. He said there was a 3-month contract, but the contract never stopped getting paid. So 20 years later, the guy was still getting paid for a 3-month contract.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, that sounds like a glitch that needed to get fixed. But the problem with the federal government and the scale of the federal government, there's about 1,000 of these types of glitches. So anyway, we'll
Well,
see.
if that contractor was honest, he'd have been returning the money all along. But I'm sure he didn't, and that money is all spent, and you'll never see it again.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this just kind of goes to the whole. Well, Trump was even saying, he said, there's 3 words we use for it, but today I'm going to say fraud and abuse. He didn't even bother to say waste. He's just the 2 worst parts of it, which are fraud and abuse. So it's good to see that it's getting fixed, but it's really frustrating when you see how the judicial activists are acting
Well,
to put a stop to it.
even just the general Congress people on the left, when Elon made the comment that there are people that are 150 years old receiving Social Security still, their argument didn't even make sense if they actually listened to themselves. They said, well, Social Security wasn't around 150 years ago. Yeah, that's kind of the point. That's exactly the point Elon Musk is making, right? These are people who are long
Well,
dead, who are still getting paid, and their families are collecting that cash.
Yeah.
well, Joe, I'm sure you as a person who's raised children recognize what that was. I did. That was the you can't be right. I'm going to find nitpicks to try and get through your argument, even though I have no goddamn clue what I'm even talking about.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly right. I I haven't been like diving into a lot of because there's been some accounts on X that have been really diving into the data mining of all the stuff that they've been putting out. And I'm like you guys, I don't have time for that. But the things that I've seen are very hopeful, and I like the kind of the big, broad brushstrokes. So absolutely, this is what I voted for. This is what you guys voted for.
Craziest thing is, as you mentioned, the judicial advocate or the judicial the misuse of their judicial authority, judicial advocacy is when, like the guy said, well, our system of government means political appointees shouldn't run the departments. No, that's been the way it is from the very beginning, right?
Yeah.
That's called civilian oversight and political oversight, right? Folks who are responsible to the voters should be in charge.
Yeah, these is it just me or are these judges tempting I feel like they're doing it on purpose, and there's a swarm of them all acting in unison to try and make Trump ignore the courts.
So for every time someone tells you no one elected Elon, tell them no one elected Barack Obama to his third term either. But there he was pulling the strings.
So, well, you know, Joe, the irony is Trump is using his unelected bureaucrat or official to get rid of the unelected bureaucrats and officials. So, I mean, it's kind of like.
I think the best part is that he used the Obama era U.S. Digital Service, which was a workaround of the civil service program,
right? Yes,
to give Elon some authority. So
yeah, it's it was brilliant because there were so many people who were like, yeah, we're not going to allow a new entity to form like Doge. That's not going to happen. And they're like, well, I mean, okay, we can literally just repaint and put a fresh coat of paint on whatever we want. Turns out Obama basically already made it. So I'm really stoked on the gents. We've all been in. Do you recall thinking about, and I recall like reading a New York Times story or something about how journalists were very impressed with how young men in the military were given such responsibilities over so many things, and how, you know, you could be 18 years old and be a squad leader, and be in charge of something that, like, back home they have 18-year-olds that intern there and they don't even let them run a copy machine. I get a kind of similar feeling coming out of the fresh-faced recruits we've got digging through these archives, these software engineers that are, 19 to 20 years old, that are going through everything. Everybody's losing their damn minds that how could you give so much responsibility to a young kid, when it turns out that, I mean, a lot of times they're the right guy for the job.
Well, what's ironic is they made that claim that, all these youngsters in charge, blah, blah, blah. Who do you think runs the White House? Interns in the 20 to 26-year-old range.
Yep.
Right.
Almost exclusively.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's 100%. And, here's the thing, right? We need those young men who are willing, young men and women, honestly, who are willing to take on responsibility and grow into something greater. This is how, I don't know if you guys, I mean, Joe, I know you know this because you were one of these guys. And Watcher, I know you've probably interacted with like those like super high end E6s, right? Who are, a squad leader with some additional attachments, with two running a tactical operation on two nets. They're 21 years old, right? They're not that old. They're 3-4 years in the military, but they're already just operating at such a high level because there's two reasons why. They self-select. First of all, they're the people who want to be there. And the second thing is that we give them the freedom to operate. You don't micromanage them. You give them right and left limits, and then you let them just kind of operate within those. And they'll, and they will fail, sure. But every time I've seen guys like that, like actual on operations, I've never seen any kind of, some are better than others, but they're all so impressive.
Amen, Michael. A goddamn man.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's true.
Joe, how you?
But before we move on, people have brought it up here. Big balls, hairy balls. Gents, what do you think? There's like 20 to 40 of them. I think they all need to take on balls code names.
I don't
Yeah.
think that you can come up with that many, but
Oh, come
Yeah.
on now.
Well, you're watching. You came up with like 5 in that one X post, and my contribution was D's balls.
D's. Sweaty.
D's balls, yeah, sweaty balls, ligma balls.
Ligma.
yeah.
So a lot of good ones out there. Saggy balls.
York, I don't know if that's a good one, York, but thank you.
I don't know. The
Saggy
reason
balls.
that I feel this is fun and important to highlight, and why I think that they're kind of falling apart, is that the world has basically been being run by like white leftist women,
Yeah.
who hate men. What's the actual official term for it? My brain's slipping at the moment, but misandrist women.
Yeah.
And this does something feels like the spell has broken, and the boys are back in town.
Well, let's be honest. Men are infantile. We are. I mean, if you don't think that you are as a man, then you're not realistic. This is what I've learned as a 50-plus-year-old guy, is that, like, I am infantile. Not like men are infantile. I'm infantile, and I know it. Right? Like. Joe, do you remember back when you were in your 30s? No, I am not infantile. What are you talking about? I'm a grown ass man. You can't tell me what, that. No, as when you get to be our age, you're like, oh yeah, I'm totally infantile, and I'm gonna die a 13-year-old. That I have a feeling that there's gonna be a 13-year-old living inside of me the day I die. So, it's just, that's part of what comes with being a guy.
Yes.
All right. Joe has you were saying some temperatures that were, speaking of balls, were causing my balls to recede into my body cavity.
I believe cold as balls. Yeah.
I cold as balls. Yeah, that's right. What did you say it got down to?
Frozen balls. It's negative 20 this morning.
Oh.
Yeah, it's
Oh my
it is
God.
not very warm at all. So we'll see. We'll see if the dogs want to go out after the show, but I doubt it. And I had to go to the rescue of Mrs. Tactical Wisdom yesterday because her brand new car would not start in the cold.
Oh my God.
Because it was negative 15 yesterday, negative 20 today. So I don't plan on going too far from the building today.
Well, I think our very own Laura Cox was just commenting in the chat at the very beginning of the show, that when you get down to North Carolina, you're going to feel like you're in a freaking sauna. It's going to be so much warmer.
Well,
Yeah.
one would hope, but it looks like it's going to be cold and rainy the whole time. So we shall see. If it ain't raining, we ain't training. So that's the way it's going to be.
Well, and I will say about that person and that place, Laura Cox gave me a personal invite to join you guys down there, and good golly, I wish I could, but I have just an ungodly, unbelievable amount of work going on where I'm at right now.
So look, if you want to see Watcher, you got to come here, because he comes here. He doesn't make it much further.
For the next little while at least. So like we've brought on chickens, we're bringing on pigs, we're still in the middle of a move. I might be having to shut down, move, and or modify and change my business. I am shipping 2 comic books in the next month. And I'm now part of a playtest group that's going to take up quite a lot of my evening time for Blaine's game. So, love everybody, but there's only so much time on the clock.
And let's now, the only extracurricular activity I'm going to authorize for you, Watcher, will be chicken tending. Because they will actually die if you don't do it. But everything else, you're a busy man here in the near future.
Well, fun part. I mean, we do have to tend them. Don't get me wrong; they're not like set and forget. But today is the very last day we have to do the most intensive part of chicken tending, because they're losing their down feathers, and they're over a week old, which is generally when you can stop checking them like 3 times a day to make sure they're not sealing their own butts closed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, that's you're kind of getting close to being out of the woods, right?
Yeah. Like I said, today's the last day they have to be checked on twice daily. After this, it'll be like once a day, going in there, switching out food and water, playing with them for a little bit to make sure that they stay friendly, and then changing out bedding, and then that's it. And then here in about a week, we move them out to the garage. So.
And we had some snow here today. If anybody cares, not much. But
I
check.
I gotta ask, does that shut Korea down?
Not the little bit we had today, but when we got in the last week, we got a 5-inch snow day, and that it was delayed. It was essential personnel only at work, and the school shut down and things like that. So yeah, it's an issue, and I'll be honest with you, the on post, all the roads were actually fairly decent, but off post, it's a fucking nightmare, man. They're not good at cleaning the roads off in this neck of the woods.
I know that when I was on 29 Palms, if we got even an inch, they shut down civilian traffic in and out of the base because there was zero stuff to do it, and they sent Amtraks out to go pick up NCOs from their houses.
Yeah, it's not like that, but it's definitely a little bit of drama, and so anyway, but so we've been having that here lately, and so check this stuff out. So I'm taking my daughter to piano lessons last night, right? And we drop her off, and it's about an hour, and we'll do a little local shopping, while we're wait, and then we'll pick her up and go home. And the fucking radiator reservoir return hose, actually 2 separate hoses attached to my radiator, burst last
night. Shit, dude.
I know, it sucked, man. I mean, the car is almost 15 years old, so
so it was age. Okay,
it's age related, so it's just but it's a pain in the ass. You know how it is.
It is for sure.
But let me tell you,
before we get to the 2 super chats over there, I want to address an issue in the chat. Watcher does not have chimkins yet. He has chimkin nuggies. Right now.
I do. Little nuggies. That's what they are. No, that's facts.
I feel like you guys are speaking a language
Speaking of which, well, hold on. I guess we haven't actually done this on the show yet. So as long as we're talking about them, I'll put the video up real quick. Most of you guys have already seen this, but we'll just.
Well, in the meantime, let me go ahead and read this super chat. Peter State's helicopter from Friday says, in honor of Mike Lee calling for congressional empowered American pirates, I shall now be known as Pinochet the Black, meeting justice 2,000 feet AGL. All right, sounds good. And let's see, Lance Corporal Veteran for $2 says, my friend is moving to West Montana in a month. Wow, that'll be a cold move.
Yeah, I would probably wait another couple months, but hey.
Wait till April at least. Maybe May.
We pushed our big class week this year into May because we did it the last week of April last year, and it snowed. So.
Oh, look at this! We got a little live chicken action.
Oh, not live. This is from.
I know. It's live video. You know what I mean? But,
oh yeah.
Look at that.
I have the ability to do that. It takes some setup, but yeah.
Well, it's like, so who says that Tim Pool is the only person who can do Chicken Cities?
Oh, you know what? As long as you brought it up, my wife had a brilliant idea. If she would have had it a little earlier, we'd have done it this year. We're going to do it next year now. You know how they have the puppy bowl?
Yeah.
Well, we discovered a very interesting chicken behavior. If there's a piece of food that it's large and they can break into small pieces, what they have a tendency to do is grab it and run away with it, and then everybody chases them. And so our thought is, make some little footballs out of scrambled egg, and then get 11 chicks, 2 on each team of 2 different colors, and then release them and let them go nuts.
Watcher, here's what I'm gonna ask you to clean up all the poop before you share the videos. I mean, because we have to have a nice sanitized
Well, we did.
studio.
This was early on when they had to have the puppy pads so they didn't
Yeah.
accidentally eat the shavings.
Hey, I want you to try something. When you finally get to the outdoor and it's summertime and it's outdoor chicken feeding and whatnot, I want you to try the gut bucket, the maggot gut bucket technique that our good friend
The
Angry American
farm.
wrote about.
Yeah.
I want to see how if that works as well as it sounds. That's because watching chickens eat maggots sounds like a freaking blast.
Worth checking out. Okay, I'll get out the way so we can do these. Looks like there's several backed up.
PDSJ's helicopter tours for $5 says, Watcher, I may have missed a reply when I asked, why not source chickens locally, or are bioengineering by Bill Gates chicks all that's available?
The specific breed of chicken that I wanted a heritage breed, which means that you can breed them together and they make the same kind of chicken. Which a lot of the chickens that people use for production nowadays are hybrid chickens. Then if you breed them together, you don't get the same kind of chicken. But I wanted one that was a very good egg layer and one that we could produce chicks to use for meat. And black Australorp is the very best for that. And absolutely nobody in my area is raising black Australorps. So that's the answer to that.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. If there's nothing else, let's jump right into it.
One in there somewhere.
I got the one in the middle. Yeah, the friend moving to Montana. I don't think I missed.
Oh, right. Yep, you did.
Yeah. All right. I think I'm all caught up. By the way, appreciate you guys, Peanut Shays and Lance Corporal Veteran, for sending those super chats. If you want to support the show, there is always the super chat method. And if you want to do something a little different, you can become a member. It's $5 on either Rumble or YouTube to do that. And what do you get for your membership? Well, you get a free super chat every month, and then you get that's about it. But you can support us, so I appreciate it if you do. If you don't, that's fine too. Everybody is welcome. The minimum amount of support I ask is please hit the like button. I don't generally ask to do that normally, except for like at the end of the show. So let's see if we can't bump the algorithm. Oh, hold on a second here. Log Cabin School for $20. That is not cheap. Thank you very much for that generous support. Good morning, CFC. I look forward to Joe's review of Wisco Mando's Midwest Foreign for bayonet use. Gotta bounce.
Hey, we're going to talk. We'll be thoroughly inspecting and checking that thing out next week. And I actually hope to see you next week, Log Cabin School. And I'm about to listen today to that Common Off the Shelf podcast with you on it, see how it went. I haven't listened to it yet, so we will get to it.
All right, guys, let's jump right into it and hit our first odds and ends here today. Under the title of warnings and indicators, Joe, I would have to file this one. China tightens screws on what can be shared online about its military, almost like they want to increase their operational security. Joe, I don't know why you'd want to do that, especially if you're a totally peaceful and, and China's famous for like having more, their secret tech leaks like a sieve when it comes to information sharing. What's your kind of initial read on this?
Well, I think that it's just one more indicator that we're getting further down the path towards some sort of action. But what I think is funny is that China already limits literally every piece of information you can share online anyway. I just can't believe that this is actually new.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is the kind of thing that I always expected them to do in the first place, but yet every time they have a new stealth fighter come out, I mean, it's like, it's some leaker who puts it out there. Now, you could say, oh, well, these are state sponsored people who are given the go-ahead. But, let's be honest, Joe, in a country of 1 billion people, somebody is going to see something and decide to say, look what I just saw. And, and usually that stuff breaks on the domestic internet and then kind of makes its way out. So I don't know. I mean, it's this may be them finally deciding to crack down on this type of stuff in a little more serious way. Let me read a little bit of this story.
So the band War Thunder is what you're saying.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's where War Thunder is fucking hilarious. All right. China has unveiled sweeping new regulations to tighten the release of information about its military online, a move that it could obscure key sources for monitoring the world's largest armed forces. The rules announced over the weekend are taking effect on March 1st, come as China is rapidly building up and modernizing the PLA to match the military of the might of the United States. It also marks the latest step in leader Xi Jinping's far-reaching campaign to bolster national security and guard state secrets in face of heightened geopolitical tensions, efforts that have been made by all the more difficult by foreign observers to understand what is happening in China. You know, Joe, for me, if I'm China, right, like it's not like, oh, well, what's the new gun or what's the new tank? That's not what I'm really kind of thinking about. It's like, what are the tactical innovations, the actual tactics that they are developing based on observation of what's happening in other countries? That would be the kind of stuff, if I were China, that I would want to kind of, protect. And that's the kind of stuff they seem to already do a pretty good job protecting.
Well, that in drone, counter drone capability, which I guess is probably exactly what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And things like that. Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, so it'd just be interesting to see, because China's always been like, on the one hand, we want to have operational security, but on the other hand, we want to brag to our people so that you don't think that we're not, lagging behind. So, it'll just be interesting to see how they balance that going forward. Now, Watcher, I know you're kind of a keen watcher of China. What's your kind of take on this? Also, dronophobe or dronophile.
Yeah. So many. First of all, I will say that while that does occasionally happen, the leak method that you've been talking about, Scott, that's part of what the Great Firewall prevents. China has the ability to monitor every single post that is made on any of their internal network. And so many things, even tiny things like, hey, a bridge collapsed, are able to just be disappeared. It takes a large mass of people to be able to actually push those stories outwardly, which does kind of makes me think that maybe this is like the new age of intelligence operations after the last group got bundled up so easily.
Yeah.
It could be. So as far as the fighters go, every characteristic that we've seen so far out of these, it essentially looks like they took like super early design variants of a lot of our current model stealth fighters, stole those plans, did no improvements, did not reverse engineer it to actually understand it, just kind of slapped features that they saw onto a jet. Like a lot of these have like they're quote unquote stealth aircraft,
right?
They still have ridiculously large aircraft or ridiculously large radar cross sections because the people who are designing them obviously don't fully understand what they're dealing with. But the argument is, or at least the argument that's always been made is, hey, they can pump them out 30-1, and that is actually a pretty good argument. As far as are they going to be successful in cracking down on this? I think so. I mean, there's some Chinese leaks like you're talking about, but if it comes out of a state agency, it's fully state approved, which is where we see most of these like newer aircraft leaks coming out of.
Well, the other thing too is even the high end aircraft, whether it's their clones of the Russian Su-27, I guess it's the Su-31. I can't remember which one it is exactly, but they don't have a lot of these things. It's not like they have like 700, like Su-27s or like 1,000 of them. I mean, China still has some issues with quality control of jet engines. They also have the same problem with the Russian designs that they've acquired, i.e.
Yeah.
the they don't last as long.
Well,
The
it's
operating
not
hours
just,
are low.
it's not just quality control. They also are very much lacking in the engineering space on this. And I know that surprises people because they look at a lot of other spaces that China is apparently at par or more advanced than us. But Chinese jet engines are like 30 to 40% underpowered for the weight compared to their American counterparts. It's bad, and a large part of that is their inability to do precision manufacturing to the type of specs that they need to.
Now, it's not that they're not catching up. They are. They're catching up at a worrying pace. I mean, China. It doesn't do us any good at kind of saying, "Oh, well, China's just not there yet. They're 15 years behind us on engine technology or whatever." That doesn't do us any good, right? Because they don't need
that
to
new
be where we
amphib
are.
they just rolled out is pretty state of the art.
It's pretty big too. Yeah, and it has capabilities that our amphibs don't have.
Right.
And again, and I said it in the beginning, the argument has always been, does it need to be on par with ours if they can produce them at 30 to 1 the pace and they don't have to transport them over an ocean to be in the conflict?
So that's it, right? Their amphibs don't have to be as good as ours. They got to make I don't know, what is it, 100 miles across the straits, and we've got to come 6,000-7,000 miles across the Pacific Ocean. Big difference there. Big difference.
Yeah. All right. Real quickly catch up here. Lance Corporal Veteran for $2 over on YouTube says chickens love meat. They like it more than anything. Okay. Yeah. Like the maggots and things like that. So yeah, that makes sense. And over on Rumble, we've got a $5 super chat. Squishy Hunter says, agree with Rowancourt, name a chicken General So that or get a rooster and name him that.
You need a General So and a Kung Pao.
I think it's fair. We'll have to see how many roosters we come out with, because if we're close to 50, my thought is to name them after the 50 states and then have the rooster be DC, because it's always fucking us. But
the other one too, I would say, Watcher, if you get piggies, because you mentioned maybe you might get a couple piggies.
That's happening. Yeah, that's happening. I have to get the.
You could name one of them Mushu pork.
Mushu.
All right. That's my dad joke of the day. So I will
Mills and Roots guinea fowl are not awesome. There is literally no need for those creatures on this planet.
I hate those things so fucking much. They're such awful birds.
It's shocking. We're 34 minutes in and we've only got through one story, but I feel the quality of the show is pretty good today. All right, let's move on to our next one here. Zelensky offers land swap with Putin to end war. Now, Joe, the reason why I laughed when I saw this, you remember the map we showed the folks the other day? I think this was last week, where you had that little sliver of was like a just a little bit of. If we can find it, that'd be worth having.
It's just like saying, I've got 32 cents here, and I want to trade it for your $50 bill.
Right. Or I'm going to trade Rhode Island for California.
Well, interestingly, I laugh because I'm betting that the map looks somewhat like, if you roll back 2 years and however many months, roughly what we proposed the land trade would look like when the war started. Because this is exactly how we predicted this was going to end.
Yeah, about the only thing that we haven't been just spot on is, we thought that they were going to get, Kherson, Mykolaiv, and all the way over to, I was going to say all the way over to Odessa. So, and they are close to Odessa, but they are not. That would be a pretty neat trick for them to get Odessa at this point. And yes, it is still on the Let's be honest. The time for Odessa really was in that first 3 months. You know, Joe,
Agreed.
when they had pushed up towards Mykolaiv, just north of Kherson. God, that takes me back to those shows where we were literally like, what the fuck is happening next? You know, it was like I felt like we were watching World War II live when we were watching that.
Yeah.
All right. Let me jump into this next article here. Zelensky offers land swap with Putin to end war. Ukrainian President Zelensky has revealed a strategic plan for ordering the risky Kursk offensive, which began in August, and has resulted in Ukraine forces holding hundreds of square miles. So that's what, 20 square miles by 10 square miles. So he has 200 square miles of land. Russian territory for the past 6 months. Zelensky said in comments published Tuesday that he's ready to swap territory with Russia as part of a deal to end the war. He described that if President Trump gets warring sides to negotiating table, we'll swap one territory for another. Ukrainian leader. When asked in the Guardian interview precisely which territories Kiev would demand back, he responded, "I don't know. We will see, but all of our territories are important. There's no priority." Well, that's a very diplomatic answer. If I were Russia, the way I would entertain this, Joe, is like, okay, we will give you 1 square mile per 1 square mile. So you give us back all of the 200 square miles of Kursk, and then we'll figure out the 200 square miles of swamp in southern Donetsk that you can have back.
They're going to end up giving back Zaporizhia. That's the throwaway out of what they hold.
Well, yeah, not the whole province, but just no
parts. Yeah.
Yeah, because Zaporizhia is the connecting piece between Donetsk and Crimea and the southern Kherson oblast that they control. So, yeah, I probably that nuclear power plant is what they give back. Honestly,
yeah.
And that would actually be a pretty good get for Zelensky if you could get the nuclear power plant back, and and enough.
Actually, I don't think Zelensky wants it back, because then he would have to explain to everyone why it's intact and not nearly blown up like they've been saying. So
yeah, this is true. C-130 Guru in Rumble says China can't build a turbine that can withstand over 850 C temperatures. Yeah, that's what I understand, is that it has to do with the heat and the metal quality and things like that. Let's see. When it comes to the 4 eastern Ukrainian territories of Donetsk, Kherson, Luhansk, and Zaporizhia. In some of those areas, frontline war zones are still being fought over, but the consensus is that Russian forces will soon conquer them fully. So, yeah, Donetsk is getting ready to get rolled over after Pokrovsk gets fully surrounded and falls. That's the last big, kind of fortress city between there and, I think, for another 100 miles or so.
And let's be honest, what's really occupied by whom? Because Donetsk and Luhansk both voted to leave Ukraine before any of this began.
Yeah.
So,
and that's where you had the center of the big resistance movement in 2014. So,
yep, absolutely.
And let's be honest, with that was where the original Russian invasion of came in, when the Ukrainians were pushing the rebels, and then all of a sudden the Russian army just basically barreled across and smacked them in southern Donetsk. Let's see. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova responded on Telegram saying, in the Kursk region, the neo-Nazis operating there control an area of approximately 2 meters and a depth of 1.5 meters. I mean, of course, she's making a joke, but she's basically joking about the same thing that we were talking about, that that Russia controls huge tracts of land, whereas Ukraine has a little bit of Kursk, and none of the major cities, by the way. It's like, I think 14, 15 villages, something like that. Let's see. Russia's defense ministry has made frequent statements highlighting Ukraine's immense losses trying to hold the seizure of Kursk territory over the last several weeks, stressing that it is Zelensky who's gotten the worst end of the gambit. Some Russian sources claim that Ukraine has lost some 50,000 troops during the invasion of the Russian territory. Yeah, so I think this is the fact that they're even kind of talking about this kind of stuff in public, Joe, I think is a good sign that they're all kind of getting ready for when they're basically called to the table.
Well, Germany yesterday said that the time has passed for Ukraine to be able to turn this around, and that at this point they cannot. So,
yeah, when Germany is basically saying, throw in the towel, buddy, it's not looking good.
Given the fact that Germany didn't throw in the towel when they should have during World War II,
right?
It's a big statement.
It's almost like they know what they're talking about.
Right.
All right, let me move on to our next story here. So, Joe, one of the things that we've talked about is this massive Chinese fentanyl trade coming across the Mexico border. The cartels have really latched on to fentanyl as a moneymaker. That and human trafficking are kind of like their big moneymakers when it comes to cross-border trafficking in recent years. But when you think of fentanyl, you don't think of like super labs in Canada.
Yeah, I was going to say, everybody has been blaming the Mexicans for fentanyl, but it turns out
blame Canada.
Snow
blame
Mexicans.
Canada. That's right. Busted fentanyl super lab in Canada makes Breaking Bad look minor league, former Trump official said. Canada's last-minute decision to cooperate with President Trump on border security and efforts to curb fentanyl trafficking was a key factor behind the president's 25% tariff threat. While Justin Trudeau has pledged to strengthen border security, a former U.S. official who led an anti-fentanyl task force under Trump's first term argued that laws in Canada hinder a proper crackdown on the flow of drugs to the U.S. Well, several months ago, you had the biggest lab in the history of the world taking over by the RCMP in Vancouver. It made Breaking Bad look minor league. A former State Department official, David Asher, told Canada's state-funded CBC News political correspondent Rosemary Barton in an interview last week. Joe, I'm almost surprised that CBC would allow anything this critical of the of little Fidelito's regime to even go to air.
Yeah, you would think. I'd like to know who owns the meth lab. I bet you they speak Chinese.
Here the next line answers your question. Asher claimed the fentanyl super lab was definitely connected to Chinese organized crime and also pointed to possible connections with Iran and even rogue biker gangs. So Iran, China, and rogue biker gangs. Talk about a match made in heaven.
Sounds like the plot to a novel by a friend of ours.
It does sound like that, doesn't it? Yeah. Definitely there was ties to Chinese organized crime, possibly Iran as well. The facts haven't been released by your government, and I think they know they're sitting on a big scandal here. Asher continued, the fact that this thing emerged and it's tied to these biker gangs who have been hired to go down to the U.S., in some cases to assassinate people like my former boss, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, President Trump, and others. This is a whole nother level of scandal. Actually, let's see how it's a little on the long side. I don't know if we want to watch this clip. Let's see. Let's just listen to maybe the first 30 seconds and see what he says.
One of the things that we have pointed to a lot over the past couple of weeks when responding to the president is the amount of fentanyl that crosses from Canada to the U.S., which is, as you know, very small. It was 43 pounds was seized at that border. But I understand you think that is not sort of something that we should be focusing on, the fact that it's a small amount, particularly compared to Mexico. Give me your thoughts.
Well, several months ago, you had the biggest lab in the history of the world.
Yeah.
Taken over by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in Vancouver. I mean, we'd never even seen anything like this. It made Breaking Bad look like, minor league. So that, and definitely where there was Chinese organized crime, possibly Iran as well. The facts have not been released by your government. It's so sort of astonishing that they haven't provided more information publicly, but I think they know they're sitting on a big scandal here. The fact that this thing emerged and it's tied into these biker gangs who've been hired to go down to the United States in some cases and assassinate people like, my former boss, Secretary Mike Pompeo, President Trump, and others. This is another whole level of scandal involving it. But the key thing to focus on is that someone was making over 100 million doses of deadly fentanyl in a lab that you didn't know about right under your nose. Now, how many other labs do you think you have going? And, let me put folks one last thing. There's very little border enforcement. So 42 kilograms, it's a nonsensical number. We don't have, most of the drugs are going from Mexico to Canada and then being brought south into the Northwest United States on ships. You have almost no port enforcement with police. So we have no idea, except from our sources, what's going on. And we hear some bad things.
I will say, I mean, they did find the super lab. I mean, I take your point. It was under their nose, but there was police work done in order to find it, uncover it, and charge the people responsible. So that is a positive piece. I take your point, though, that there could be more. And so tell me what more you think needs to be done to deal with some of the things you're talking about, as well as the czar. They've increased surveillance at the border. They are going to crack down on Mexican cartels. I talked to the RCMP commissioner about that. And there is more shared intelligence that's going to happen between Canada and the U.S. What else would be helpful in this instance then?
Let me first stress the RCMP is an excellent organization. Okay, you got very good police in your country. Yeah. Okay, you got great CSI.
Let's stop it there for a minute because that's an asinine comment. The RCMP being a great organization, I'll remind you, the RCMP intentionally destroyed a farmer's equipment because it was too close to the border. So,
quote unquote, yeah.
Where
they asked him to park it,
so they could do it without being observed. So,
it was exactly where they asked him to park it.
Yeah, right. And Pinochet asked for $2. How devastating would 43 pounds of fentanyl be? That's the point I was going to make. 43 pounds is enough to kill thousands of people, right? It's not like you need a lot of fentanyl.
Also,
probably a lot more than thousands.
Yeah.
Also, her argument is like, oh, that's how much has been seized at the border, brother. The Mexican or the Canadian border is so much more loose than the Mexican border, and people didn't think it was a big problem coming from Mexico, which ipso facto means there's probably a shit ton more that has got through than anybody realizes.
Yeah.
You don't set up a lab like that if you don't have a distribution network set up to establish it. And I don't know how to tell you this, but Canada largely isn't having the same problem with fentanyl being found in all their other drugs that America is. So if they have the giant lab to produce it, where's the fentanyl going?
Good point.
Yeah. And what's its intent? Its intent is to destabilize the West. Yeah,
and let's be honest, China has always had their grimy paws on the Canadian leadership, the Canadian elites. So if China wants to help depopulate the U.S. With by using Canada to smuggle hundreds of thousands, the drugs that will kill 100,000 people every year almost, then Canada will go along with their Chinese masters, because let's be honest, that's if I had to pick a master for China, that's it. It's it's the Chinese absolutely run roughshod over the Canadian government.
Hey, but I'll tell you, listen, and I said it in another context yesterday, but Canadians, many of you were very viscerally upset at the joking that went on about making conquering Canada and making a 51st state. Listen, man, you guys have an open communist revolution going on in your country, and you are literally committing chemical warfare against the United States through drug trafficking. If you want to ensure that we do actually conquer you, not a joke, keep it up.
Yeah, the funny thing has been all these people who are like, you don't know, we're talking about war here, It's like, it's like, yes, we understand what you're saying, and we ignore it and disregard it because
oh God. Yeah, I was going to say, if you think the Canadian military has literally any chance whatsoever against the US military, also, many of you threatening to make Afghanistan look like guys, you have the population of a single province in Afghanistan, and it's spread out across our entire border.
I think we have enough military in Alaska to include Air Force, Army, and let's call it Pacific Fleet kind of adjacent ships to make make a day of the Canadian military if that's the way it goes. That being said, the Canadian military people are pretty damn sane and they would rather be part of us rather than go to war against us for the most part.
They've got a great national anthem, but you guys didn't realize that the True North, strong and free, there was an asterisk after the free part. But
yeah.
So
well, it meant that they had to remain so.
All right. Anything else on this, gents? Fentanyl coming from Canada. Real quick, let me. So we've got this. I think it's worth showing this this chart again, Watcher. The illicit and synthetic opioid flows from China, and kind of like, just to remind, it's not like it's only coming from Canada or it's only coming from Mexico. No, it's coming from both in probably equal quantities. And if I had to be guess, a much smaller percentage of what gets caught is being found in the Canadian border than what you find in Mexico.
Yeah, we got PD doing some actual research in our chat here for us. He's apparently tracked down the name of the guy who owned the building the lab was operating out of.
Yeah, I see that. Okay. Interesting. That's an interesting name. Peter Shays Helicopter Tours for $5 says, let's not forget the DOJ sued eBay over sales of commercial grade pill presses sold to God knows who, or the California biolabs. West Coast is a Silk Road for the communists and globalists. There's a lot of stuff going on there. Yep. And there's a lot of Chinese names connected to even like the illicit biolabs and things like that that have been found on the West Coast. And you never hear anything about that. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
All right. Let us move along. So I've got this extra one in here. And I thought it's kind of...
Actually, if you'll allow me, I think that we have a very short but very pressing domestic odds and ends that I'm going to slip in just here real briefly. Oh, did they take it down? That's going to make me so mad.
I hope it's the one that I was just about to ask you to throw in.
Is it the Babylon B one?
Yes. Oh, well, way to give it away.
Yeah, it doesn't give it away.
Way to ruin the suspense, Scott.
quick news update from Middle Earth.
Yes, this is great. Sauron appointed judge rules Frodo must return ring to Sauron because of course he would. Shocking what happens when you own the judges.
Yeah, it's a right-wing conspiracy that Sauron has one ring to rule them all.
That's right. How dare he? Watcher. Well done. All right. Let's see. This last one there's just some points in here that I wanted to bring up because we've been talking a lot about the South Africa stuff lately. And one of the things that we talked about on Monday was the kind of the Trump deal to allow folks to come as refugees, and the irony is that it's a way like Trump's problems with South Africa go way beyond just how they're treating the Boers. Supporters applauded Trump for giving attention to what's considered to be a long ignored issue of black on white racial discriminatory policies, while opponents have believed that it's a racist move promulgated on false pretense. Oh, by the way, Joe, have you noticed all these self-hating whites coming on in South Africa, the liberal elite whites in South Africa saying nobody's killing our farmers, nobody's targeting whites. If anything, we're still living under the advantages we gained under apartheid.
Yes, I've got a memo here. Those people are morons. It says
morons. Yes,
morons. That's the term.
Well, there was this one gal who was speaking in one of the South African languages, and she was blonde hair, blue eyes, and I was like, I don't even know what to make of this, and I just tagged Reaper and Gideon. I was like, I got nothing. Anyway, so there's a lot more to this, right? To oversimplify, the brutal murders of some Boers in their farms led to Afrikaners suspecting that the ANC turns a blind eye to this and even encourages it. Oh, the other one I thought, Joe, I now remember, is that all of these Dutch descendant Afrikaners are saying, we don't even claim Elon Musk. Elon Musk sucks. It's like, he's not one of us. He's an English colonizer, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, bullshit. You guys would claim him in a fucking heartbeat if he said he was going to be building shit in South Africa.
Well, like I said, 5 years ago, they used to love him. So,
yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. Let's see.
We would be remiss if we didn't mention Ty's follow-up to the story that we just did on Appointed Judge. Meanwhile, fireworks entrepreneur Samwise Gamgee is under attack for his inspections of commercial kitchens within the Shire.
Yeah, they're also coming after him because it turned out that he sold the wrong size firework on eBay without a license.
And they've been shouting, "No one elected Samwise." So
that's right.
Yeah.
The ANC-led South Africa has presented itself as a multipolar pole in Africa amidst a global systemic transition to which end it sought to increase its role in BRICS alongside participating in multilateral naval drills with China and Russia, thus reinforcing aforesaid international reputation. The U.S. disapproved of South Africa's flexing its sovereignty in such a symbolic way. And then in addition to that, they supported the Gazans during the recent, terror campaign by Israel to root out terrorists in Gaza. I guess Gaza had a right to attack Israel. Go figure. So this is the basis on which Trump is now waging his own pressure campaign on South Africa. It's debatable whether Trump truly believes the BRICS are conspiring to create a new currency or backing the yuan as a rival to the dollar, or if it's just a pretext for him to individually pressure its members. But he recently repeated the threat to impose 100% tariffs against them preceding his executive order. That would suck for South Africa, let's be honest.
Yeah. South Africa already is dependent upon the rest of the world for survival. It's just a shame they shouldn't be, but they are, because kleptocracy is sort of the way.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought this was a good coda to some of the things that we were talking about. It's not just about the Boers. It's a more broad kind of policy against South Africa as a whole, but definitely the racial discrimination and the lack of inclusivity and equity for the poor minorities of South Africa is.
There's actually been a pretty good study done on the performance of farms that have already been turned over from Boer farmers to the other people, and what has happened to those farms. And let me just say that Rhodesia was an example for a reason.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Joe, I hesitate to ask, but any
There is a new article up. There is a new article up.
Very good. Very good.
I wrote it late last night, talking about some different things, and for those during the show, it's pretty good. But I wrote an article on actually taking action and not just talking about it, and what that means from a preparedness standpoint, and what that means about us taking a role in reclaiming our society. We can't get society fixed by waiting for someone else to do it. It's our responsibility, and we need to start acting, not just talking. So check out the article; it's pretty good stuff. It's a pretty quick read. Not a lot of drama in there, but check it out.
Very good. Thank you very much. And if, as always, if they want, they've got an opportunity to do a little training with you later in February if they're in the North Carolina area.
Some training coming up next week. We're going to be in down at NC Scouts Place next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, doing some fieldcraft class. There are a couple seats still available if anyone wants to sign up. Or just show up and bring cash. We'll have fun. But you need to know where that is. So you need to let me know firsthand where that you're coming. But we'll be there. I'll have books and T-shirts and patches and all that good stuff available. And if you ordered books and T-shirts and patches on Monday, they're on their way already. So cool stuff.
Speaking of patches, since a certain watcher on the web is going to be probably steadily engaged in home business here in the next month, maybe this is a good opportunity
time to get some more patches out.
To start working patches. Yeah. Let's see. I have a question to the chat. If you guys would you be more interested in like a flag size kind of tactical cap patch? Or would you be more interested in a larger kind of like a new variant of our classic logo, or something totally different? If you guys want to throw that in the chat, I'd be interested to see where that lands.
I have heard in person at classes many a request for a tactical version of our patch.
Of our class. Yeah, I think that's a no-brainer.
Right?
Yeah, subdued version. Right? Yeah. I think a black, tan, and brown or green version. I think that would work.
I think there's a $5 Rumble rant.
There is. Pinochet's helicopter.
Oh no, we already discovered that. Never mind.
Oh yeah, we did already get this one. There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Joe, let's talk about the war that'll start on Saturday, or maybe it's just an attack or a bombing campaign. It sounds like Israel's ready to go back in addition to the unleashing hell on Hamas that Trump announced if they don't release all the hostages. They've been nickeling and diming these hostages out like it's kind of like a daily episodic show or something like that. Actually, it hasn't even been daily. It's been more weekly. Did you notice that the ones that they released first were the most healthy looking? Those females and they were clearly propagandized to the gills because they were smiling and acting like, they just came home from summer camp and they hadn't been gang raped the way they probably were. I probably can't say that on YouTube, but I just did.
And of course, once they got away from the men with guns, they started telling their true story. And they've been enduring horror. These are not good and virtuous people who are holding hostages.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I've seen clips of this where people enhance the audio and you can literally hear the hostage takers telling them to keep waving and smile.
Yeah. I haven't followed up on any statements made by the females that were released recently. But I can't imagine they have nice things to say once they had the freedom to actually.
Well, one mentioned
act
that she was
independently.
raped daily and that an older woman was killed because they couldn't sell her as a sex slave. So,
Yeah, it'd be very, very reminiscent of what we heard under ISIS with the Yazidi women. Boys and older women were executed, and the young women were basically sex slaves. What's so this just goes to show you the insidious nature of political Islam, Joe. Specifically the kind of the Salafist Islamists. They literally will marry the girl, in a ceremony, rape her, and then have basically a divorce ceremony and then leave. So they can say, "Oh well, I married her, so she was my wife, so it's not rape."
it was perfectly legal. Yeah.
Well, illegal under their law, but not legal anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
Israel backs Trump's Unleash Hell plan for Gaza if hostages aren't freed by Saturday. Following an urgent security cabinet meeting, Israeli government has declared that it backs President Trump's latest threat, warning Hamas that all hell will break loose if Hamas doesn't release all hostages from Gaza by Saturday. All cabinet members expressed support for President Trump's demand for the release of our hostage by noon on Shabbat, and for his revolutionary vision for the future of Gaza. This is really interesting. I'm curious if Netanyahu is fully embracing this idea that essentially America will take over possession of Gaza, develop it, and then basically turn it back over to Israel, which is what I imagine that he's thinking they'll do.
It's an absolutely horrible idea.
I totally agree. I mean, unless it's done just like, you turn it over to like Caesar's palace and let them, create a.
Nope, still a terrible idea.
I just
Because
don't want
it's not
any
gonna
Americans
last.
to have any. I just don't want any American money or people or specifically soldiers to have any fucking thing to do with this thing.
Exactly right. And when they said, "Oh, this idea came from Jared Kushner," surprising no one.
Yeah, well, surprise, surprise, surprise. This unanimous declaration includes backing Trump's vision of taking over Gaza and relocating all Palestinians to neighboring Arab countries. All of the Arab countries have said, get the fuck out of here. We're not doing this.
Most famously, King Abdullah. So.
Yeah. That was a rather. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. That was a rather interesting.
Hold on. I just have to say another very unsurprising thing about Kushner that I just learned is you hear these ideas that he has, and then you ask yourself, where was such a man educated? And can you guess?
London.
Well, Harvard, of course.
Harvard. We already have stickers. Sorry. All right. Fair enough. All right. Let's continue on here. On Monday night, Prime Minister Netanyahu ordered Israeli military to reinforce its position in the Gaza Strip and along the borders in readiness for all scenarios in the event of Hamas refuses to release the hostages Saturday. Trump's statement has demanded a full release by noon. However, Israel is unlikely to completely break the ceasefire if Hamas still frees the 3 captives originally scheduled for release. This would mark the 6th round of hostage releasing under a current 42-day phase of the truce deal. One regional Arab pundit, Omar Rahman, a fellow from the Middle East Council on Global Affairs, said that all of this is a win for Netanyahu, who has proven an effective manipulator of foreign leaders and public opinion. Netanyahu allowed the release of some hostages and then went to Washington to talk to Trump himself, and he got Trump to agree to the terms. His war goals are the destruction of Gaza, the displacement of the population, and the elimination of Hamas. I am 100% behind the elimination of Hamas.
So am I, but look, this all hinges on something that was brought up earlier here, and nobody's brought this up yet, right? This all hinges on finding a new place for the people of Gaza to go. And even when he was on with the King of Jordan, who is unquestionably our most gracious ally in the area, he had the King of Jordan on stage with him and was asked, well, where are they going to go? and said, I'm sure that our allies in the Middle East can be persuaded to. And the King of Jordan flat out said, no, it's not happening.
There was an interesting acquiescence when they said that they would take like 2,000 children and babies, Palestinian children and babies. So interesting there.
Woo, tiniest
I know,
drop imaginable.
I know, but my point is that it's not a no. It's a very tiny drop in the bucket. So we'll see if that changes. So here's my question, guys. I don't think Trump would bluff on something like this unless they had some really good intel and some good targeting data to be able to drop consequential amounts of bombs on very specific targets, minimizing civilian casualties in Gaza, not eliminating, but minimizing. What's your take, and what do you think Trump has up his sleeve?
Well, I'll start. I could be wrong, but I disagree with you. This, to me, feels very much like Trump's traditional opening move in literally any negotiation, which is to go for the big ask and then negotiate down from there. The U.S. taking over Gaza is the biggest ask imaginable, which gives him a lot of negotiating room to come back down from. I do think they probably have that targeting data available for sure. I think that probably has less to do with the taking over of Gaza and more to do with the hostages, which he made such a big deal about during the campaign. And I feel like he is probably following that up on as a promises made, promises kept, and a pretty strong one, honestly.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I think the closest thing to a win that we're going to get from this is if some very selective bunker busters fall from B-52s or B-1s or something like that at a height that they never see, and they hit bunkers that don't have any hostages in them.
There's a very interesting thing going on in the chat that's been going on the internet forever, and everyone's like, do we think he means this, or maybe he means that, or he's trying to pressure this? You guys, that's all. You're all hoping here that Donald Trump has some magical play. It's a terrible idea, no matter how you slice it, and it's really one of the issues that we should just stay away from. Right? We're never going to solve the Middle East peace problem. No one is ever.
Yeah,
and anyone who touches it, that just becomes the number one legacy they have is a failure in the Middle East yet again. It's time to just let that go and let Middle Eastern people handle the Middle East.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, the irony is that many of our allies in the Middle East, whether it's Hakeem Abdullah in Jordan or whether it's the Saudi Arabians or, the Kuwaitis or UAE, they generally want the kind of Middle East that we would like to see, which is one without war, right? Not irrespective of types of governance, right?
Yeah.
They want, because they want to make money. They want to get on with business, and all this shit takes away from that. So, I'm inclined to agree with you. And Israel is a Middle Eastern country, and Israel should be able to handle its affairs the way it chooses to.
I'd like to add something. It's just a prediction. I think that the next place we go from here, and this is just gut instinct, Trump's going to revive the old talks about, well, why don't we develop the Sinai and we'll move them all into the Sinai and we'll take the Sinai away from Egypt and we're going to give it to the Gazans.
Yeah, that is not going to happen.
I agree, but I think that's one of the next places that we try and go with negotiations.
If anything, I could see them trying to put up tents all along the kind of the not where the cities of Gaza are, but out in the countryside. Kind of like 10 kilometers inland from where all the cities are near the coast. Maybe that's what they do. I don't know. Who cares? Who knows? I don't know. What I do find interesting.
At the risk of pissing a lot of people off, I really agree with Karen O about this. I don't think Gaza should be rebuilt before the hostages and the various different kibbutz that they destroyed get rebuilt. Symbolically, that that has to happen first.
Here's my thing. I think our direct interest in Gaza has everything to do with the American hostages being held. As soon as that's taken care of, I think, we can basically peace out and let Israel handle it. And that being said, us dropping bombs on Hamas to compel them to release American hostages is a justifiable use of American force.
It is, but it also just emboldens them. It'll be the greatest recruiting tool Hamas has ever had.
Well, if the only way I would say that you could do it is if you did it in a deniable manner, like you let Israel take credit for it or something like that. You know what I mean?
Have we considered opening up USAID and giving Hamas a loan for some radios?
I was disappointed to find out that the condoms didn't go to Gaza, Gaza, but Gaza and Ethiopia or something like this.
I have to say, guys, I want to say people were really upset that we found a plan to give condoms to the Taliban, and I just have to say that, guys, I get it, but you're being a little short-sighted here. If there's anybody we don't want reproducing, it's the Taliban.
Well, here's the thing: they tend to choose young boys versus women. So
we're also losing your audio, Washer.
Yeah, it did go down a little bit. Hey, real quick, Watcher, go down.
Gene Rogers points out a very vital thing: Gaza shouldn't be rebuilt before North Carolina. 100%.
Yeah. Watcher, I want to play this. The IDF has recruited the Killdozer and put it to work in Jenin in the West Bank. It is now ripping up the roads inside Jenin. This is actually kind of brilliant. It's basically an FU for not doing whatever it is they told them to do. Now it pisses people off, but then again, nobody gets killed. It pisses people off, and then they leave, and then the people look at their local administrators and say, "What are you going to do to fix this now?" And it causes internal kind of strife. So these are the kind of disruption tactics that actually are fairly savvy beyond just dropping bombs. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said in a new statement, assessing damage costs, while it's not possible in current environment to fully assess the totality of the needs that will be required in Gaza, the interim assessment offers an early indication of enormous scale recovery and reconstruction needs of Gaza. So it's literally going to be probably, billions and hundreds of billions of dollars would be needed to rebuild it anything like it was. I don't know that there's a building with more than 2 stories that's still standing without damage to it.
Am I the only one who subscribes to this theory that America needs to stop doing this really fucking weird thing that we do, where we go, "Hey, you've done something terrible. You've done something terrible, and we are now going to go to war with you and destroy your military," and then come back in afterwards and say, "All right, now we're going to completely rebuild your country." No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, we don't have a dog in that fight. That is absolutely not something we need to do. Joe, you got more on that?
No, I was just agreeing with him. I mean, it's a silly idea. We don't have a. Here's the thing: we want to spend all this money destroying it, spend all this money rebuilding it. What's the point? Just let somebody else handle that problem.
Well, the irony is that Gaza is probably the most destroyed urban area in the world. You would literally have to rebuild the whole thing. I was looking at some footage,
and yet they all still have internet service and they all still have phone service.
Oh, the irony. All right. Well, maybe they have that SpaceX, satellite phone service now, like everybody has. Israeli hostages account for abuse of raise alarm for remaining captives. So this kind of gets to what we were talking about previously. Bound, starved, wounded, tortured. These are the conditions that some of the hostages being held in Gaza still face, according to information their families said that they've received from Israeli military and security officials after Hamas released 3 captives on Saturday as part of a ceasefire agreement. The emaciated appearance of 3 hostages released in a ceremony in Gaza staged by Hamas. That tells you everything you need to know. In Gaza, staged by Hamas. Those should be words that are never able to be put together in a sentence ever again. These 3 individuals, the details of their captivity have relatives of the remaining captives sounding the alarm about the urgent need for continuation of the phased ceasefire deal. Urgency comes as the militant group said on Monday that it would indefinitely postpone the next hostage releases set for Saturday, citing Israeli ceasefire violations. I get the feeling that we're going to end up dropping bombs, and a lot of them. That's just my gut feeling.
Yeah.
And you know, Joe, this is the perfect place for Donald Trump to actually show, listen, I'm not fucking around, and to the rest of the world, right? So he gets to drop bombs and then not look like a total asshole because Hamas has already bombed back into the Stone Age.
Yeah, but they're going to make it out to be the worst thing ever to happen.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, Joe, they stopped corruption in USAID, and they're saying that, oh my God, this is, you know, you've got to give the money back. You know, you got to get the corrupt money back.
I do want to stop and pause for a second and ask if just analyze the situation. So Hamas largely relies on many Middle Eastern allies to stay alive at all. They have almost no useful production within country. So most of those allies are either completely wiped off the map, Hezbollah, or are in such dire straits that they don't really have the ability to continue supporting them in the near future. Iran. Which leaves Iraq, which mostly was being involved because of Iran. So if there were ever a time to try and wipe this organization off the map, it's kind of now.
Yeah. Let's hold on a second here. Let me get back. Okay, I'm sorry. Before they are handed over to the Red Cross officials in exchange for 183 Palestinian prisoners on Saturday, the frail, painfully thin hostages were paraded on stage before a crowd in the city of Deir al-Balah, Gaza, each holding a Hamas-issued release certificate and made to recite words written for them, including thanks to the militants who held them for 16 months. A doctor in charge of overseeing the treatment of 2 of the freed prisoners said that later they were in very poor condition. The third was in severe nutritional state, according to an official. Hamas said it treats the captives benevolently. Sure, they did. Under the first phase of the ceasefire deal, an armed Palestinian group agreed to free 25 living hostages and the bodies of 8 who were killed in exchange for 1,500 Palestinian prisoners. So far, half those exchanges have been carried out. They've literally got a gun to the Israelis' head. These are the kind of things that I'm leery on. This is the kind of, like, you can't make a deal with terrorists, right? This kind of goes to that. I know it would be great to get all these people back alive, but just imagine what positive reinforcement you're doing that will essentially see this continue to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it is exactly that. It's positive reinforcement. It's giving them a PR win, and these poor people are just forced to do it, right? It's wild.
Yeah. Let's see. She's learned from Israelis. This mother learned from Israeli security forces that her son, who was shot in the leg during the 2023 attack on Israel, has not received treatment for his injuries. Her son reportedly sees almost no sunshine, has been bound throughout most of the 500 days of captivity. What does that do to you? You're bound for almost 500 days. As far as just how, there's kind of a mental conditioning and damage that goes into that. I mean, that's literally a form of torture if you think about it. They've been starved and endured intentional torture. The findings are clear and deeply alarming. They are subject to deliberate starvation and severe water deprivation. They are undergoing extreme physical and emotional abuse. There is a clear and present danger for all the hostages' lives. Let's see. Yesterday, my brother returned after 491 days of hell. I hugged him, but he wasn't the same or who left home on October 7th. He was hungry, barefoot, and in constant fear. But the hardest blow came on Saturday when his brother learned that his wife had not survived the attack at the Nova Music Festival. That's gotta fucking suck. He said I was held in tunnels without seeing daylight, had no access to media, experienced severe hunger, went entire months without showering or receiving proper care. He called the continuation of the ceasefire and noted that after the first temporary deal, the war was struck between Israel and Hamas. The conditions during his captivity had severely deteriorated, became brutal. We must not stop the current deal. We must continue working to free all the hostages. Hamas is a cruel enemy who will not hesitate to harm the hostages left behind. Yeah, I mean, I get the feeling that as sure that as Donald Trump is speaking, I get the feeling that they have a pretty good idea where the hostages are, so they know where they can drop bombs and where they can't. Now, that being said, if they blow up a lot of bunkers, then Hamas very well could retaliate by executing prisoners. And if they were to do that, I would say all bets are off, and that this war breaks back. So, yeah, this war just breaks back open.
I think that's personally, I think if you actually commit to it, that's a very short war.
I think they have them on the ropes, right? And now that Hamas has kind of come out of their caves, they know where the caves are. They know where Hamas is. Now, yeah, would they kill some civilians going after Hamas? Sure, they would. But Hamas is out of its caves, so it would be a lot easier to kill them now. Just kind of giving a flavor of what's happening on the in the rest of the kind of Palestinian conflict in the East Bank or in the West Bank. Palestinian Authority says 2 women, 1 pregnant, killed by Israeli fire in West Bank. Probing. This is a Times of Israel story, so not completely biased against Israel. The Palestinian Authority Health Ministry reported on Sunday that 2 Palestinian women, one of them pregnant, were shot and killed by Israeli gunfire near a refugee camp amidst expansion of the IDF's ongoing counterterrorism offensive in the northern West Bank. The IDF military police has launched an investigation in an incident, it said in a response on Sunday. It say the 2 women were identified aged 21 and 23. And unfortunately, one of the women was pregnant 8 months and died of her injuries. Medical teams were unable to save the baby's life due to the IDF preventing transfer of the injured to hospital, the PA Health Ministry said in a statement. So this could be true or this could be false. We don't know. We would just have to take.
It's the Palestinian Authority,
right? That's what I'm saying. I'm just keeping. I'm not making a call there. It could be true, but it also could be a fucking lie. They say she was dead when she arrived at the local hospital.
It could theoretically be an incredibly rare instance of them telling the truth, or we could look at historical precedent and say that there's a 99.9999999% chance that it's a lie.
Oh, I guarantee that some part of this narrative is an absolute fabrication in order to make Israel look bad. That being said, the woman probably did die, and Israel probably did, shoot her. But that's what happens in urban operations. The IDF launched a major offensive dubbed Operation Iron Wall in the West Bank on January 21st, aimed at rooting out Palestinian terror groups from Jenin, which has long been a hotbed of terrorism. The interesting thing has been the unique Palestinian Authority, the pretty muscular Palestinian Authority action that also is being targeted at terrorists. So these are terrorists going after other terrorists. So
Shame.
it's you hate to see it. Let them fight. That's the quote. Troops have been arresting some 6,000 wanted Palestinians across the West Bank, including more than 2,350 affiliated with Hamas. According to the Palestinian Authority Health Ministry, more than 900 West Bank Palestinians have been killed in that time. The IDF says the vast majority were gunmen killed in exchanges of fire, rioters who clashed with troops, or terrorists carrying out attacks. During the same period, 48 people, including Israeli security personnel, have been killed in terrorist attacks in Israel. This is an ongoing, let's be honest, this is a guerrilla war going on, being waged against Israel out of the West Bank. They're using people as cover and concealment for their operations. And this is how these women got killed, because these absolute psychopaths are operating in and amongst a fairly dense urban area, and when they shoot at Israelis and the Israelis shoot back, some innocent person on the other side of the wall gets killed. So all right, let's see. This is the last in this section. So we talked about the rather awkward encounter between Donald Trump and King Abdullah. Egypt Sisi cancels planned White House visit after awkward Trump King Abdullah meeting. This was awkward. I'll be honest with you. I don't disagree with a lot of the things that Trump said, but I did feel like this was awkward. So he was going to visit on February 18th. It's been reported Tuesday as an indefinite postponement. The key factor, which has reportedly brought U.S.-Egypt relations to a low point, is Trump's takeover plans to expel Gazans into Egypt and Jordan. Another factor is Trump's repeated reference to Sisi as the general, which was used publicly when Israel's Netanyahu recently visited the White House. I think that's really funny that he calls him that, because leave it to a dictator to get upset when he says things like, "Oh, he's my favorite dictator," or "he's a general," or something like that. Egyptian officials viewed this as dismissive. Well, it probably should be. I mean, it's Egypt. And then this was during Trump's first term back in 2019 at a G7 summit. He said, "Where's my favorite dictator?" Trump called out in a voice loud enough to be heard by the small gathering of American and Egyptian officials. The same report writes that Trump's controversial Gaza plan, an Egyptian diplomatic source in Washington, said the foreign minister Badr has warned U.S. officials and members of Congress that implementing Trump's relocation plan could lead to a resurgence of radical Islamist groups in the region. Well, because Joe, it's funny. They see that it would be, these Palestinians might be radical Islamists. Well, no shit, really?
No kidding.
That's the reason. I mean, let's be honest, if Egypt wants to basically separate the women and children and put all the men in prison, I would be okay with that. That would probably be a prudent, if they took the El Salvador approach to Hezbollah or Hamas, that might work. You know what? Before you go into the prison, though, the Hamas prison, then they have to tattoo a big H on your face. So that everybody knows that you're always down with the Hamas set of the local gang. Let's see. Jordan is in lockstep with Egypt on this. Trump hosted King Abdullah II on Tuesday in an awkward meeting, which saw the monarch reject Trump's pressure. The king tried to preempt further pressure from Trump by pledging to take in 2,000 Palestinian children. Otherwise, Jordanian sources have said that they would seal the borders and potentially declare war in Israel if a mass cleansing campaign ensues. The president and the king fielded some questions from reporters where King Abdullah tried to slow roll Trump's Gaza proposal, which is vastly unpopular in the Middle East. Trump, meanwhile, vowed to the press but he also lauded Abdullah and his pledge to take in 2,006 Palestinian children. In the end, nothing much came of Abdullah-Trump meeting, but likely Jordan was offered some major incentive by Trump behind the scenes. The king immediately followed his meeting, emphasizing Jordan firmly rejects any displacement of Palestinians from the Gaza Strip, and said all Arab leaders would stand unified with this because none of them want the fucking Palestinians in their country. That's the part that they don't say. Let's watch a little bit of this clip here at the bottom.
And I truly believe that with all the challenges that we have in the Middle East, that I finally see somebody that can take us across the finish line to bring stability, peace, and prosperity to all of us in the region. And it is, I think, our collective responsibility in the Middle East to continue to work with you, to support you, to achieve those lofty goals. So I'm very delighted to be here. And as you said, sir, we've got some very interesting discussions ahead.
Very good. Very good. Thank you very much.
So that was the diplomatic, ending. If you go up a little bit, there's actually a more full video where Trump puts a clearly nervous Abdullah on the spot in front of the press pool. Anyway, so guys, comments, questions about the hell that's getting ready to unleash on Hamas.
Did you want this video or?
Oh no, it's fine. It's just a longer version of what we just saw.
Okay.
Anything to add, gents?
I think we can't trust these people. I think that hostage takers are hostage takers. And I think that trusting them has never worked out before.
I think the only way Israel's going to be able to rebuild Gaza in a way that without displacing the Palestinians in that area is if they just do it internally. Like they basically clear out a whole city, like literally every person out of the city, and then they just rebuild the city. You know what I mean? Like that's the only way you could do it. But who the fuck wants to spend that kind of money? Maybe the Arabs are dumb enough to put their money into it. I don't know. Probably not. The next thing I wanted to talk about here is the segment where it's titled "Make Europe Great Again." In the areas where most people aren't talking about future conflict, this is where I see future conflict, and it's in Europe. And it really hinges upon what's happening right now with AfD and some of these other right-wing populist parties in Europe that stand, firmly against, this free movement of Middle Eastern and African immigrants into Europe. You're seeing a lot of countries kind of start to reject this. Even in Germany, it's very popular to, the remigration or whatever they call it, the sending them back. So there's a big rally, I guess, in Spain. Far-right leaders rally in Spain to make Europe great again. A gathering in Madrid, members of Europe's far-right parties say set aside any trepidation. So I love how they just remember this is New York Times. And so they will always say things like far-right, right? I mean, these people are left of MAGA, if it makes you feel any better. That just goes to show you how far-right anybody in Europe is. Vox is the party in Spain, kind of like the equivalent of AfD in Germany. Since taking office, President Trump has threatened European countries' security and economies, angled to take control of Greenland, and promised definitely to slap the nations with tariff. He's already done that, and he's already won almost all of those spats. Even parties that would seem to be his natural allies are nervous. Some have quietly tiptoed back from American president. But Saturday was not the day for disputes. Leaders of the far-right parties in Europe came, I'm just going to call it the sane parties in Europe, came to Madrid for what, on the surface level at least, amounted to a bold-faced names booster rally for a new Trump era. There was Marine Le Pen, France's sane national rally, the Netherlands populist Geert Wilders, the leader of Italy's League Party, Matteo Salvini, all made clear that they shared Mr. Trump's charge against what they see as wokeism, gender theory, and overwhelming environmentalism. Yeah, they've got it way worse in Europe when it comes to environmental regulations and some of this stuff. For them, the American president has blown through the last barriers that has confined their parties to political margins. Trump's tornado has changed the world in just a couple of weeks, says Viktor Orban of Hungary. And he formed the stage of the summit, whose slogan was "Make Europe Great Again." Mega. Yesterday we were the heretics. Now we are the mainstream. People said. I think this is exactly what they need to do in Europe. They need this kind of, this multinational alliance, because the only way you kill the EU is from within it, using basically the structure that they created to rule Europe. You're going to need to use that in order to dismantle the whole fucking thing, so that you can reestablish sovereignty of these countries.
Well, interestingly, I think a lot of this speaks to how much of this was driven by to be honest, by us, by America. I think that this is falling apart now because the Democrats and I should say the post World War II Democratic orders started losing power in America. The kind of consensus to where no one would be allowed to pick any leaders that would go outside of certain bounds and respect on certain unwritten treaties, right? I think that falling apart here caused them to be unfocused in other areas. And I mean, another kind of example of this is that the trans stuff is now starting to fall apart in the UK, which was one of the worst areas for it. And it turns out that people are admitting that a lot of that was driven by the UK trying to suck up to us.
Yeah. Yeah. And the irony is that UK, especially on the trans stuff for kids and whatnot, has absolutely rejected that. Even their liberals, people are like, listen, this is a little too much. We're not going to do this.
That, and I don't know, seeing a country be unapologetically, seeing a country who is a world leader be unapologetically nationalistic seems to have opened the floodgates to make that a permissible view worldwide. And
here's the question. They've already noticed that some of the more left-leaning ministers in parliament in the UK have stopped receiving support for their more socially liberal kind of ideas, because the vast majority of the voters are very conservative Muslims.
Yeah.
I'm curious, at what point do they does the split occur between the Islamists in and the people who just, they're old school, like liberal, hippie types, well, not hippie, but, statist leftists, commies or whatever. I wonder when we see that split occur, because we started to see that split occur after some of the Palestinian protests here in the U.S. But by and large, the left still supports the Palestinian cause. Let's see. Many of the parties are still considered pariahs in European Parliament in Brussels. Right-wing leaders like Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni of Italy did not join the event organized by the group, which calls itself Patriots of Europe, in that legislative body. In elections last summer, the European Parliament, what many had anticipated would be a wave of support for far-right party did not fully materialize. But many of these parties are popular amongst young voters and stand a chance of entering governments in coming elections. They think Mr. Trump's victory has put wind in their sails. Trump brought a political earthquake to the world, Wilders said. He brings a message of hope. So Wilders is one of the guys who we were reporting on as one of the leaders of the kind of the farm protests in Holland. Was that Joe? Was it last year, or is it last spring, wasn't it? I can't remember exactly when that was.
Yeah, I think so.
They skewered liberal fascists who they said replace Christian civilization with a sick satanic utopia, and the creeps who want to turn our children into trans freaks. Their supposed ethnic replacement of native-born Europeans by immigrants. They borrowed liberally from conspiracy theories. No, so here's the interesting thing. This is literally the point I want to transition to the next story if we can. So this is absolutely conspiracy theory language, right? Au contraire, mon frere. Let's go to this French year. French far left leader Mélenchon openly calls for great replacement in shock speech. In two speeches given less than 24 hours apart in the French city of Toulouse, Jean-Marie Mélenchon delivered some of the most shocking yet brutally honest words from a European politician, openly calling for older French to be replaced by a Creole generation of mixed races and cultures. The leader of France's far left, LFI, is calling for the outright replacement of white French people, conjuring up the great replacement terms that has been demonized as a conspiracy theory for years. Oh my God! Literally, the conspiracy theory has come out of the shadows in France and absolutely just made its. The mask is
make racism great again.
Right? Exactly right, and we want to, and white people need to go. And oh, by the way, but not me. I'll help get rid of them, and then I'll die and I don't care because he says, in our country, 1 person in 4 has a foreign grandparent. 40% of the population speaks at least 2 languages. We are destined to become a Creole nation, and so much the better. May the younger generation be the great replacement for the old generation, he said. According to the dictionary, Creole is defined as a person of mixed European and Black descent, especially in the Caribbean. He goes on to make a number of further statements saying the new immigrants need to heal France from the wounds of racism. Being racist helps heal anyway. Furthermore, he makes inflammatory statements calling for torchbearers to bring about change and has revolutionary undertones, although he stops short of calls for direct violence because in France, if I remember correctly, that is illegal. Let's listen to this guy a little bit. I mean, he's speaking French, but it's got big bold subtitles, so you can kind of follow along. It says, our country has been plowed under, bruised and battered by racism, and it still is. You can see it popping up elsewhere on publishing and the press, on TV, everywhere. The reemergence of racism, differentialism, the essential of man as man and woman as real woman are all obscurants, so something to cut off your path from the something. In our country, 1 person in 4 has. So anyway, I've already kind of read this part. Exactly right. This is absolutely insane. So who's his enemy? He says it's tradition, the past, France of yesterday, and still today. He denounces the old rag to be thrown away because it no longer exists. I mean, when are people going to fucking start listening to what these people are saying? Because they're coming right out and telling us what they believe.
No. That's just a conspiracy theory. No, he literally just said it.
Well, for years now, the WEF's been doing the same thing. I mean, fuck the whole Great Reset and the whole overturning of the international rule-based order was entirely part of the book that they put out. What was the fourth? It wasn't the fourth turning. It was the fourth something. Turning. No, the fourth turning is a different. It's the fourth something revolution or something like that. And it was a book that not Hans. What's his name? Hans Zimmer. That's his name, right? Put out under the kind of as like one of the manifestos for the WEF, and it's absolutely fucking insane. So these people it's nothing new that these people are just so full of themselves. They think that nobody has any problem with this stuff. But the sad thing is in Europe, they're able to literally get away with all this. So when they say they want to kill you, take them at their word. All right. All right, guys, this is the final story I have, and we will call it a night or morning for you guys.
Yes.
So this is my favorite. This is one of the Anadolu Agency. This was the Turkish outlet that I had to read pretty much every day when I was working in Turkey. And I'm so glad I don't have to read it anymore. Danish intelligence warns of potential military conflict between Russia and Europe within 5 years. Isn't that convenient? Vague enough, yet very specific. You know, Joe, I don't disagree that there's conflict in the world, but this ain't one of them.
Well, he's actually right, because the European powers are really begging for it and pushing for it, not because Russia is.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But the sad thing is if Europe attacks Russia, they don't get to call that an attack by Russia. Just kind of like, when
Well,
Poland...
it doesn't say that. It says a conflict between them.
The irony is that this is the way they put it, though. They absolutely turn it as Russia as being aggressive, right? They're painting Russia as the aggressor. This is like painting Poland as the aggressor against Nazi Germany. Denmark's Defense Intelligence Service warned Tuesday that Europe could face a large-scale war with Russia within 5 years if the war in Ukraine freezes or ends and NATO fails to rearm simultaneously. Denmark's state news media reported Russia has already managed to upgrade its capacity, both modernized military equipment, and has also significantly increased military production. Now, that's true. And it's ironic to see like a European intelligence service that would publicly admit to this, because I thought the Russians were on the brink of collapse.
Well,
they
I
didn't
think that
have any
Russia
good
has
stuff.
proven that they are not.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's to the point, though, that even European nations can't deny it. Russia can already today be free up resources for its rearmament vis-a-vis NATO, not least because the financial and material support of the country receives from outside. He said regular military attack on Denmark. He said there's no current threat of that, but also noted that Russia is the largest military power in the region. And Putin would rather not get rid of that title. Russia wants to control over the sea areas north of its mainland. It's possible that Russia wants control all the way to the North Pole. Russia's maritime doctrine from 2022 opens up the possibility of using all means to defend Russia's interests north of the country, including military force. They say a regular military attack against Greenland and Faroe Islands differs from the threat against Denmark because Russia sees the two countries in a North American context. This means that Russia will not necessarily involve Greenland and the Faroe Islands in a European conflict, and that this country's strategic interest is in the area is more linked to its relationship with the United States than with Europe. It's interesting that they're connecting those two areas with the United States, almost kind of like, we don't need them. That's the United States. Unless the United States wants them, then no, they can't have them. Right. I just thought this was kind of interesting to show what the mentality of these European kind of intel agencies were. No big shocking news in this. It was just kind of an ironic kind of aside based on what we had just talked about with the Make Europe Great Again crowd. Gentlemen, let's wrap it up. Looking towards later in the week, Joe, anything that you can kind of, I get the feeling that there's some stuff developing, specifically south of the border, but also in the domestic context. Anything that you're kind of picking up?
An increase in intensity of protesting, not necessarily volume, but intensity. Yeah. The people are getting more angry. It's funny, they're not angry about the fraud, waste, and abuse. They're angry that we're stopping it, probably because it was a big source of funding for a lot of groups. And I saw somebody mention Candace Owen on here. You might want to read the USAID documents to see how much money Candace Owen gets from USAID, so USAID. So interesting.
Boy,
But I pointed out
funny
this morning that Latin America, they are the one country that's not upset about the stopping of USAID financing because they felt that it was financing all their opposition. And that's because it was.
Yeah.
So pretty interesting stuff there. USAID is how you got Lula, which was
Yep.
not a net positive for the areas south of the border.
uh,
So I would watch for that. I see they got unions out on the street today marching. So I watch that kind of stuff, and I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop on the Hamas hostage situation this weekend.
You know, Joe, real quick, I'd like to address the thing that we were talking about. You were mentioning on some getting a little pushback from folks on X about that community security group. It's good to see that people, no matter who they are, feel confident within the U.S. Under the Trump administration to actually take charge and secure their communities. I thought that was a pretty positive thing, but a lot of people made it out to be a negative.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
And
it's I don't even want to talk about that anymore because it's filled my email, it's filled my DMs with nothing but hate. And
yeah.
look, man, if you want to hate people because of their skin color, that's on you. I'm not going to do it with you.
now I know nobody in this chat would ever do that, but if you are inclined to and you haven't said anything, listen. People are individuals. Individuals have the right to keep and bear arms, right? And it doesn't matter what color they are what ultimately matters is they're a law-abiding person who's willing to, stand by and protect their God-given rights. And just remember, the rights are not given to you by the Constitution. They're given to you by God, and the Constitution just enshrines that the government does not have the ability to take those rights away from you.
And the Bible says in Proverbs 3:30, "Do not contend with a man if he has done you no harm." So I'm not going to hate an entire class of people just because someone else tells me to.
Yeah, we don't do broad brushstrokes of people here. We take people as individuals. If people are acting are abiding the law, then we treat them as such.
In Militant Roots, you're right. It's okay to hate commies and pedos, though, because those are not people. That is true.
These are actions and choices that people have taken that have brought them, away from the grace of God. So
Communists are self-declared government property. At worst, it's vandalism.
that's true. Watcher, looking to the rest of the week. Anything you're picking up on?
Yeah. Interesting development. There's intergovernmental warfare happening in our government. I'm wondering when or if Kash Patel is going to get confirmed, because I suspect that the day that happens, you're going to see some FBI agents arrested for the ICE leaks, if nothing else. I think you all would be very wise to remember that just because Donald Trump is currently the head of the government, that does not mean you may suddenly release the tension built up over the last 10 years is gone. That the people who have wanted you dead, wanted your children raped and brainwashed, and think it's funny are any less organized or ready and prepared to do violence against you than they have been. And in fact, they're very likely feeling more galvanized, right? So get your preps out and make sure that you are securing your family's ability to feed themselves. And as a last note, just on a lighthearted note, are we still on YouTube? Hopefully this doesn't get us off, but
you can say whatever you want after the 2-hour mark.
Okay, cool. Well, it's not so much saying. I'm going to show you some topless chicks in short skirts.
Look at that.
Nice. You got chicks dancing. Oh boy.
All right, I've got my own funny to share, because you just don't see this kind of stuff every day, and we need to see more of this types of thing, because I just hope this wasn't our favorite cowboy who had one too many. Let me We got a cowboy getting chased by the police going down the side of the road.
Oh yeah, I've seen
Oh.
this.
Oh.
Boom.
Oh.
Evidently, the writer is the one that is truly paying for his crime, and the Horace just laughs and says, "Hey, man, I got nothing to do with this." Anyway,
Another news, local dentist buys new boat.
exactly right. All right. That's all I've got, gentlemen. Thank you for being here. As always, good show. Appreciate you. Chat, you guys kept your end of the bargain, and I'm so happy that you chose this time. You have many podcasts and YouTube channels that you can be watching. Thank you for choosing ours. I will be back with my buddies on Friday. We'll be talking, do a domestic Friday. There's some domestic threats that we need to kind of talk about, and there's also probably some movement on confirmations that we'll cover some of that. So it should be interesting. Cash Patel, and who's the other? Tulsi Gabbard, I think, they're actually voting for her this morning, aren't they?
No, you didn't hear the
postponed.
roughly half inch of snow in DC has fully shut down the Capitol. They've postponed the a political saying to keep in mind that is likely applied here is when you have no powder, delay.
Yeah, don't get me started. All right. So we'll have some stuff to talk about on Friday along these lines. So tune in then. Thank you for being here. Thank you for participating. Thank you for hitting the like button. If you haven't done already, subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notification. Let people know that you get good stuff here at the Council for Future Conflict. And as always, stay safe.